Cool.
So it's definitely recording this time?
Yep. All
Cool.
Hello and welcome to What, So What, Now What. Today is the 2nd of January 2018 and I'm joined by my co-host, Ravi.
Hello.
This podcast is about data and technology. So, Ravi, why did we start this podcast?
Sure, yeah. So this is one of the things that I think we both wanted to do for a while.
Yeah.
And it sort of stemmed from many, many long chats where oftentimes I was talking at you as well as with you. I think one of the early ideas for naming this podcast was Ravi Talks, Tim Listens. But yeah, no, the structure, the name What, So What, Now What comes from a presentation style. So when you're presenting, you start off with the what, you then move on to the so what, and then you finish off with a nice big now what. And I thought it was quite a nice way to structure a podcast.
Absolutely. And I think data and technology are two things that we're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm extremely passionate about technology. We both work in data, and I think we have some perspectives there that we can share. And,
yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully, if you enjoy it, let us know on whatever podcast listening method you're using. Also on Twitter, let us know there. We love the feedback, especially early on in our first few episodes, so be in touch. Today, we thought we'd talk about goals. This is that time of the year when everyone sets their goals, and so which podcast isn't talking about the year ahead and what it has to offer? So, goal setting. Like, what's the deal with that?
So yeah, I mean, this time of year, everyone's talking about their New Year's resolutions, what they resolve to be doing for the 12 months ahead. And it's a bit of an arbitrary thing, right? To say today or in the first couple of weeks of the final few weeks of 2017, you sort of decide what you're going to do for the next 52 weeks, the 365 days. And you're like, I'm going to, I don't know, sell 1,000 things every week, or I'm going to, I don't know, write a blog, 2 blogs a month. It can't be that hard, right? And it often starts off well with good intentions and then fizzles out. So what is a goal? It depends, right? It depends on your perspective, how you're framing it, how you want to move forward with it. And yeah, ultimately it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's setting a goal at the start of a calendar year. So
I guess we've done the what, setting a goal. I guess the description of a goal in itself is an interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think of them as milestones, and rather than a goal is something you're trying to achieve. So it's more like a milestone you're trying to reach that you set for yourself. So, but different people describe goals completely differently. Now, the so what aspect of this is the interesting thing that I find. I used to set goals pretty religiously at the beginning and the year, and at the end of the year I'd reflect on them. I'm thinking until about 2.5 years ago, it dawned on me, January is the worst possible time to be setting goals.
Yeah.
And let me elaborate this. And I'm sorry to anyone who sets their goals in January, but this is just my personal opinion. If you look at the year as a whole, you really need to set goals at a time and place that is suited towards whatever's going on in your life. And for me personally, it's just not January nor December. For me and the work that I do, it's actually more around October, September, when you have conferences, when you've surrounded yourself with other people in the community, your peers, your friends. Lots of stuff happens over the sort of the summer holidays or the summer break, wherever you are. And obviously that changes for different people in different countries. But I feel that having had that exposure to people, I'm better placed to actually be able to sit and reflect on what I want to work on for the year ahead. So my goal calendar, or when I set my sort of objectives for the year as a whole, don't map to the calendar year. They map between October and September each year. And I use that space and time between September and October to December to just formalize in my head what I actually want to do to make those things happen. Then I use January onwards to sort of make that happen. And it lines up nicely for me. I think when I've changed jobs in the past, that's exactly the same thing that's happened. I've used that time before Christmas, before the new year, to rationalize what exactly I'm thinking about. And then I've made that thing happen in the year after. And I feel it gives me a longer run into things. And I get myself to a situation where I can, 6 months in, I can actually reflect on what I've done so far and do things to change.
I guess that actually, thinking about it, maps quite nicely to, animal cycles, right? Because if you think about it, you've got the winter hibernation period where you're imbibing or developing in your little hub, and then spring comes in, spring with the reinvention and a start of new life, whatever, and that's when you're making that step forward. So I guess it works quite nicely to think of it seasonally rather than periodically. I think that's sort of my view with my reflections I wrote in a blog post recently of 2017 was very much that everything that happened that I'd class as an achievement wasn't anything near what I could have set myself, because everything that happened last year was very fluid. And I think that's very much the case for a lot of people, be it personal, very much so in personal life, but definitely even in the professional sphere as well. So, goal setting, yes, makes sense, but I think that having, as you said, milestones in a periodic way makes way more sense. But yeah, I think, but it depends, right? So I think the nice part of the change of the year is there's a very definitive, clear point where people like to move forward and develop and think of different, the things that they wish they would have done in a previous year, and then move it to resolve to do it in the next year. But I don't think it will actually, nothing ever matters unless you actually make it happen, right?
Yeah.
Unless you actually take a period of time to say, at this point, I'm going to look back and say, have I achieved X, Y, and Z?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing about that is that the process of setting goals should be a continuous one. There's no reason why it has to be happen seasonally either. You could set yourself goals on an ongoing basis.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to wait for a particular opportunity. You don't have to sort of tie yourself down. And I find that really sort of liberating. Like a goal can be something you decide to do tomorrow and finish the day after.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be as small as that, or it can be as ambitious as something that you do over a long period of time, let's say a decade or 5 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
A good example is buying a home, right? That's a long-term goal.
Yeah.
When you achieve it, it's a pretty big deal. You celebrate it and you plan for that in a very long, holistic way, but you can't really control exactly when that happens.
So here's a question for you. You endeavour to do a marathon every year, right?
Absolutely.
When did you set that goal for yourself? Like, what was the reasoning behind it?
It was completely spur of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The simple fact was I realised I was on a streak. So I realised that I'd done 2 marathons every year over a succession of 2 years. And so I decided, well, this seems to be something I'm capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd hate in the future to stop doing it because I'm being lazy or something.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I found in those 2 years that running was something that really motivated me, kept me sort of engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also one of those unique moments where I could track my progress. I was in control of like the destiny from start to finish. So I said, you know what? This is a good influence in my life. I'm going to make sure that I do this every year.
Mm-hmm.
So at that moment in time, it was actually after the Yorkshire Marathon. So it was in October of 2015, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I just said, okay, I'm going to do this every year. And the funny thing is that also doesn't mean that I've booked all my marathons for this year.
Right.
It means that in February, I might decide to do the Barcelona Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Or I might be lazy and in summer, I might sign up to the Amsterdam Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely free flowing, but I've made sure that every single year since 2000 and I think it's now 13, I've done a marathon, and that remains the case.
So going back to goal setting, I feel like what's more important than setting a goal and sticking to it or achieving it is the framework that surrounds it, right?
Yeah.
So thinking about it on a maybe not a meta level, but on a sort of higher level, you're thinking, so in order to achieve this goal, what do I need to do? And that's more rewarding, right? Everyone, you talk about the standard quote of it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? And maybe, I don't know, I feel like there should be more thought put into the planning of the goal and achieving it than there is on the goal itself. I guess that happens inherently if you're adamant and determined enough to stick to that goal and wanting to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many obstacles and hurdles you have to go through to achieve a goal, and I feel like those almost seem to be more better marketed and mapped to say, okay, in order to run a marathon, you can't just sign up for one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I said this year I'm going to run a marathon, I am definitely not capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Given my fitness levels, given the fact that I don't run that often, given the fact that I need to set aside time to train for one, do an hour, 2 hour runs, 3 hour, 4 hour runs for a full marathon.
Yeah.
So for me, I'd need to think of that before saying myself, I'm going to book a marathon and do it.
Exactly.
So I think the framework and the milestones. I mean, in some cases, those need to be documented better. To say, okay, you've decided to join a gym.
Yeah.
What you actually need to do is fix your diet first. Set aside your routine in a day.
Yeah.
Think about exactly what you're going to do in order to achieve it. So, for example, if I said this year I want to learn Python, I want to master it and actually get it to a level where I can do most of the things I do with Alteryx in Python as a interchangeable step, and then also push the abilities of integrating Python into Tableau. I would need to understand exactly what I needed to install onto my PC, exactly what I needed to learn, what was the best way for me to learn Python, and all these different things. I mean, and I feel like a lot of these things aren't documented. You don't talk about them, and people that achieve those goals don't reflect on those enough.
Yes, true. Very true.
You're more likely to get someone to say, oh, hi, by the way, I learned Python this year and now I'm really good at it. It's like, people, I want to know what you're sweating over. I want to know the steps you took. I'd rather follow you on that journey than know that you accomplished it.
And even if people aren't sharing that, I think in general, people should be more aware that the final achievement that you often see from people is the sum total of a lot of pain and suffering and stress to actually get to that point. A marathon's a good example. You have to train miles and miles. If you're learning Python, yes, you could learn Python, the language, but that doesn't mean you're able and capable of.
You're not a data scientist,
Python.
right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it doesn't even mean you're a data scientist. You just know Python.
Yeah.
To apply it to that specific field, that you'll need to go down a very specific learning path. And JavaScript is a really good example. That's something I'm aspiring to learn a lot more this year. JavaScript is just a hellhole of learning, because there's so many libraries that sit on top of it that just don't work with each other and that break. And people have ideological views on which ones you should and shouldn't use. But the pain and process of figuring those out and learning that is part of what it takes to be a developer in that sense. So I guess now we're on to the now what. Okay, so we've talked about the goal, time of the year. We've done the so what, why we set goals and where. What's in the year ahead for you then?
So I mean, again, like I said, I don't really like setting myself solid goals, purely because of what I said, right? Like everything that I achieved in 2017 was so fluid and just happened. And, for example, I talked about becoming fully Tableau server certified. If I'd said to myself on the 1st of January 2017, by the end of the year you're going to have sat that 7-hour exam and you'd have passed it, I would have probably laughed at that person, because it just wasn't in my field of vision. And I have to give a shout out to Carl Orchard for pushing me to do that, and also to Jonathan McDonald for supporting me in that journey. But now this year I want to talk about that journey, because I've sort of been under that hood for the 6 months that I was doing a lot of server related work. And I want to talk about that a lot more. And I think that's what's in store for me personally in the year ahead. I want to start talking a lot more about the work I do, but also how I do it. Yeah. I want to talk about the process.
But let me challenge you on something. Are you saying, therefore, that you've set goals in the past, but they're nowhere near as accomplished as the things you've actually achieved? Does that mean that you actually, therefore, could do a better job of setting more ambitious goals?
I think I could do a better job of setting different goals. I feel like I'm very much guilty of being a lazy person, in that I will set goals that I know I'll be able to hit, right?
Okay.
So, for example, I'll say, I'll cycle 20 kilometers this weekend, because I know I can cycle 20 kilometers, because I've done it before. Now, if I said to myself I can cycle 50 or 80, I would. Yeah, I would. I don't think I would set that. So maybe that's something in me that's like, I'll just hit a goal that I can achieve to get that internal satisfaction. So maybe that is
under promise over deliver.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, spoken like a true consultant. No, for me, I think I want to talk about that a lot more. Talk about my struggles and how to overcome them. How I personally have overcome them. And that process. And maybe I need to reevaluate the way I do set my goals. But I definitely don't think it will be approaching it in the way of, I'll set a goal in January or February and then expect to do it in a 12-month arbitrary period of time. It'll be a long-term goal or a very short-term goal or a goal with check points and milestones where I'll stop and reflect and say, okay, at what point am I along on this goal? Have I ignored it? Has it been sort of left alone to sort of die down? Have I just purposely just put it to one side for now, and when can I pick it up? I think this is where the field you work in with data and being able to quantify that is a really nice thing to do.
Yeah.
But also sometimes quite hard, right?
It's extremely hard. So to touch on that, I guess first I'll touch on my objectives for the year.
Yeah, sure.
I've already started them, as I highlighted earlier. I spent September till now thinking about that. I guess for the year ahead, for me, it's oriented around my profession, data, Tableau. I really want to be a positive influence in the community. I think the community has a lot of challenges. Had a lot of challenges last year. I think some people would argue it doesn't. I would argue it does.
Yep.
And this year, those challenges need to be sort of addressed. You have to be an active member of the discussion to help address those issues.
For sure.
But I also think there are areas which we as a community haven't even just realised that we need to start exposing ourselves to. The obvious one is, exposing ourselves to more critical feedback from other tools and other things. You get that from, your Power BI crew. And I actually think that criticism is really healthy. But I'd love to see us going out onto other social platforms. I think Twitter has turned into a very safe haven for the Tableau community.
Absolutely.
We all understand it. We all know how it works. I'd love to see us go into new places. So on my front, I'm going to be sort of taking a backseat on Twitter and going into other platforms. So Reddit, Snapchat. I have no idea how Snapchat works, but my God, it's on my phone. I have a tablet in profile. We're going to have a go and trying to see if I can reach a different audience. 2 years ago, I talked a lot about vlogging, and I tried it, and it's really, really hard. I spent a whole year last year just trying to understand how I could vlog about Tableau, and I think I've figured it out this year. I think maybe I have something that will work. And then also just producing more engaging content. I think there's lots of blogs out there. I don't think me writing another blog on how to do something technical is going to add anything to the community. So I'm going to take a slightly different angle and focus in on the product a little bit more.
Okay.
To talk more about ideas around improving the product. Some of the best discussions I've had about Tableau were with people who build Tableau.
Developers. Absolutely, 100%.
That was a really rewarding experience from conference. So I'm going to try and immerse myself more into that. So that's my year ahead. And in terms of how you track that, the data, I use a tool called Rescue Time, which I guess is a very simple thing to do. Track the applications you use, and your applications are sort of a proxy to what you're doing. But then there's the softer side of things, how do you make sure that you're spending enough mental time thinking about those things?
Right.
It's not enough just to be in WordPress writing a blog. The output there is actually what you're putting out, the quality of what you're putting out, and whether people are engaging with it, and that's hard.
Yeah. So I feel like the structure, I feel like that comes down to this framing of a goal, right? Like, as in the goal is the end goal, but the structure and the way you're approaching it is so difficult and should be the crux of where you're putting most of your effort in. I think you're sort of thinking of vlogging is exactly that. Like, there has to be a good way for you to vlog where you see you as a person talking to the camera, but also screen sharing on certain points or having a superimposed image, stuff like that. There's so many different ways to do it, and it's finding the right one that works perfectly for you.
Yeah.
So, during my time in the data school, we were obviously encouraged to blog, and I did, do I'm bored of writing a blog now, I'm going to try doing a video. And I hated that because, I wouldn't say I hated it. I didn't it didn't always I didn't always agree with it because I found it more difficult to do that rather than sort of drawing. I'm very much a sketcher. So when I'm sitting with someone explaining something, I'll draw something out rather than show them. They both work in tandem, and having those two things would be perfect for me if I was to do a how-to vlog. But I think in terms of your goals that they sound good, right? Like, I feel like I'm definitely on your side with the community and the fact that it needs to develop and almost evolve, right? It needs to reinvent itself to be something different, a bit more nurturing, and almost take a step back from just pumping content for the sake of pumping content, and more look at purposeful building of blogs and things like this.
Yeah, I think the thing you touched on there, pumping content, I think there's a little bit of an effect which happens a lot on Twitter, which is, I think, by proxy of what Twitter is and the way the stream works, that's what's rewarded, right? Because Twitter rewards likes and retweets.
It's a crowd rewarding, right? You've got the social environment.
And so if you're trying to build a profile in this field or in this sector, and you find that most of the community is on Twitter, and you find that the thing that engages people is content, then that's what naturally happens. Everyone produces content, and it's good content. It's not bad content.
Of course, yeah.
So that is an issue with Twitter, which is why I say I think we've gone comfortable with Twitter. I think if you went to Reddit, if you went to lots of different platforms, I mean, Facebook for work that the Tableau London user group uses, that's a completely different dynamic, and you see different types of conversations happening there because they're like that. But the big question for the community, for me, is we are a minority in those social networks, and actually the majority of our users aren't in those places. So how do you reach them in their sort of networks and get them the kind of help that this community has to offer? If you look at Emma White at the Information Lab with the Centre of Excellence, that's a brilliant example of how you can reach a group of people that aren't on a social platform like Twitter, but do need that support and help. And I'd love to see that happening in lots of different ways in the community. I think also tracking and data, it takes time for you to be comfortable with a metric that actually allows you to fully understand how you're progressing. So for me, it took, I think, about 25 video uploads on YouTube to fully understand what it takes to make a video. So there is a little bit of a risk here in that you'll set goals and you'll sort of be blissfully unaware of what you're going into. So you'll set some very unrealistic goals initially, but it's about being happy with the process of discovering that you've set unrealistic goals, changing that, and then figuring out what metric is it that I should be paying attention to. So for vlogging, for example, I know that to create a 5-minute vlog, I need about an hour and a half of footage. Because I know that now. That's why I haven't vlogged all year, because I know I don't have the kind of time I need to put out 10-minute videos every single week.
Yeah.
But I know how to build that into my life now and my structure, because I know the upfront time it takes. And by the way, if anyone is interested in vlogging, please be in touch. I don't want to do this on my own. I think other people can do it. And I think, this is a community thing. We should all figure out ways of doing the same thing because we all have different perspectives to offer.
I feel like the idea of a shared goal, even with this vlog thing, I feel like a shared goal is a lot more, maybe even a bit more achievable, because you've got multiple people saying, hey, do you remember that thing we set out to do? Can we just carry on doing it? Or I've done this much, and then you feel obliged. It's that sort of peer pressure that can help you achieve a goal, right?
Yeah.
And again, if I feel like goal setting at the start of a year with 1 or 2 people maybe can help push you a bit further.
Exactly.
But it comes down to context, right?
Yeah.
How are you framing your goal? How are you approaching the outcome, and how are you measuring the output? What at the end of 2018, how are you going to look back and say, I achieved this goal or I didn't achieve this goal? But what I want to see is I want someone to be able to map the progress to a goal and whether they achieved it or not, and that should be one of a long reflection. That's the sort of thing I want to.
A good feedback mechanism for me is I try not to share my goals too widely. And I try and see if other people notice those things. So a really positive thing for me would be for someone at the end of the year to come back and say to me, I've noticed that, during this period of time, you've done more of X. Because then that to me is important, because I'm trying to reach the community. So therefore, if I get positive feedback from the community, that's a good thing. And I think people should look for more feedback mechanisms like that, because with a lot of what you do, especially goal setting, if it affects other people, you need to be slightly self-aware that you're not self-indulging in just rewarding yourself. You need to make sure you're actually doing something that's rewarding the collective, if that's your aim.
Yeah, I think that comes down to constant development, right? And I think this is something that we've spoken about in the past, of how you actually approach learning and how you actually approach sharing, and the fact that if you do share something very technical, it should be accessible for multiple levels.
Yes.
So someone who is incredibly good can just scan through it and be like, oh yeah, I understand that from start to finish. But someone who's very much starting out at the start of their Tableau journey or Alteryx journey or whatever technology you're blogging about and wanting to share, they can also say, that looks interesting, I want to do it, and they can follow along and understand it. It should be accessible in the way that, but also maybe not accessible in that perhaps that form, in that medium, but almost accessible in that, okay, if anyone wants to know more, please do contact me. Reach out, yeah, exactly.
Or
having
do a
that
vlog. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a webinar even. I feel like webinars are very, very good because you'll get people who are very interested in a certain topic coming to you in order to have that interaction.
Yeah.
One-to-one.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings about webinars. I also think that they're very poor ways of gauging attention, right? Because you've really got to have some sort of real-time feedback from the audience. Part of, public speaking is being able to gauge the audience. And
correct.
I always feel webinars, they don't give you that enough. So I feel like they need like a like button, so you can, like on Instagram Live or whatever, Snapchat, you get the hearts.
Periscope.
You need that on webinars.
100%. Although that said, you got to think about them. One of the biggest platforms for video sharing right now, Twitch.
Yeah.
That has that feedback mechanism. You can see who's chatting to you, and the person who's streaming can, they can see that. Maybe it's just that the gamer community is a lot more vocal than someone who's tuned in to watch, I don't know, me talk about the top 5 things I've learned about data viz in the last month.
I have a confession to make, Ravi. I have a Twitch streaming And
can you confirm or deny that Twitch is a lot more interactive than a webinar?
I have only had a sum total of 7 people watch me play Destiny 2. However, they were very engaged.
Okay.
And they weren't just joining in terms of comments. They were actually, sending lots of kind of great feedback, how to do things. So it is much, much more engaging. And it's funny how gaming has figured that out to the point where there are even standalone apps that do those kind of things. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think technology, the way we do things is getting easier and easier to bring in interactions that were previously actually quite hard to do. I think going forward, it's going to be amazing.
I feel like 2018 is going to be a year of integrations, right? Everything's going to slowly.
Wasn't that 2017?
Right, yeah. 2017 is a lot of aggregation, right?
Everyone's got an Alexa or Google Now in their home. Now this is the year when it all starts actually working.
It all starts actually working, developing to a more widespread audience.
I believe that when I see it. Alexa still goes off when the TV advert comes on. It's a long way to go for me. Again, I think that's been an episode of What, So What, Now What. Let us know what you think about the format. It's not the first time, it's the second time we've actually recorded a podcast.
Second recording.
At the beginning of the recording, I don't know if you heard, but we actually recorded an entire episode before this 2-3 months ago.
Yeah.
And I forgot to press the record button, so there we go.
So yeah, that was me checking at the start, saying, "Are you definitely sure it's recording this time?" And hopefully it will be the case. No, I definitely send in our feedback, but also ideas on what you want us to talk about and think about. I mean, we've got a brief list already about topics that we're happy to cover. But yeah, no, any requests, I guess, will be welcome.
Absolutely.
But let us know what you think.
And we've kept this under 30 minutes, so we're hoping to keep these podcasts brief and short, just enough for your commute, but not too long to sort of drown you out.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you. Cheers.